So take a few moments to make sure that you're settled in a comfortable position. Try to let go of any tension there may be anywhere in your body. Try to be as relaxed as possible while still keeping your back straight, not slouching, because that helps the mind to be more clear and focused when meditating or listening to teachings. And also make sure your mind is settled down. If there are thoughts about the past or the future or anything not related to what we are doing here, put those thoughts aside for now. You can always pick them up again later if they're important, but just really try to keep your mind here and now, focused on what we are doing. So we've been mainly focusing on how to cultivate positive attitudes towards other people and other living beings, and trying to do so in a equanimous way, an impartial way, not reserving positive feelings only for a select few and then ignoring others or even feeling hostile towards others, but trying to recognize that everyone, every person, every living being, that means every being that has a mind, consciousness, awareness, wants to be happy just as we do, wants to be free of suffering just as we do, and that they deserve our respect, our concern, our efforts to help them find happiness and be free of suffering. And then we started looking at how to build up even more positive feelings, such as recognizing how we are dependent on others for our own happiness, so that we can then have a sense of appreciation and gratitude and want to help them in return and treat them with kindness as much as we can. And we're going to continue building on those thoughts and start looking at how to generate greater love and compassion. But there's other aspects of the Buddhist teachings that talk about different things, like how to look at beings and phenomena and understand how they actually exist, as opposed to how we normally see them. So yesterday we talked about that a little bit, about wisdom, the wisdom of emptiness. That's the highest type of wisdom, understanding that everyone and everything is empty of existing in a real, solid, concrete, independent way, which is how it appears. And so if we do want to follow the path and eventually reach enlightenment, that is a wisdom we need to develop. But it's not easy. We need to listen to teachings, study them, reflect on them, meditate on them. It takes quite a while to get an understanding of that kind of nature of things and start having that wisdom in our mind. But an easier topic to understand is impermanence. That's not so deep and difficult to understand as emptiness. We can see lots of examples of impermanence in our lives and in the world around us, how things change. They're not permanent, fixed, staying exactly the same forever. But things change, people get old and die. Buildings or other structures that were once there might fall down, burn down, or get torn down for new things to be built, and so on. So just spend a few moments contemplating examples of impermanence that you've noticed in your life, in your experience. So if we make an effort to be aware of impermanence, there are examples of it we can see on a daily basis. For example, I've noticed that some of the leaves on the trees are already turning yellow and brown or red, signs of autumn. It seemed like just yesterday it was spring, everything was green. But yeah, slowly they have been changing day by day, moment by moment, getting older. Now the real signs of impermanence are showing. And we can also notice it in our bodies if we pay attention. Hair is turning gray, skin turning wrinkled, drier, and so on. Getting fatter, getting thinner. Things we used to be able to do with ease becoming more difficult. Our body getting less agile, more stiff, more aches and pains. And so it's also very helpful to bring awareness of impermanence to our relationships with others, our perceptions of others, to counteract the tendency to see people as permanent, as if they're going to be there forever and not change. This is something kind of subtle and deep in our mind. And we need to counteract that because it's just not true. It's not reality. So it is important to contemplate impermanence about other people. And that is a helpful tool in this cultivation of love and compassion. It can help us to overcome attachment to loved ones. I mean, we do want to love them and cherish them and care for them and help them as much as we can. But if there's attachment mixed in with our good feelings, then that makes the relationship kind of sticky and can lead to problems like being annoyed or angry at the person when they don't do what we want them to do. But also sadness and grief when we notice that this person is getting older and maybe they are diagnosed with some illness that could lead to their demise. So if we're familiar with impermanence, that can help us to have strong, genuine feelings of love and compassion, free of this attachment based on wishing them to be permanent, wishing them to never change and be there forever. So our love and compassion can be more pure, more genuine. And it can also help us with those people and beings that we dislike. Because when we have anger and aversion towards anyone, that goes with an image of the person as being fixed, 100% negative, bad, not having any good qualities at all. And it can seem as if they've always been that way and they always will be that way, which is totally untrue. Nobody's like that. Everyone has some good qualities and does some positive things. And also people change. Somebody who at one point in time might be really obnoxious and difficult, but later they change, become much more friendly, easy to get along with. So being aware of impermanence can give us more space in our mind, more openness, rather than having this very solid, fixed view of the other person, which feeds anger and aversion and dislike. And then with the third type of person, the so-called strangers towards whom we have a sort of uncaring indifference. So contemplating impermanence can help clear that attitude away. We realize that, well, there's always the potential to get to know this person, become friends with them, maybe really good friends. So there's really no such thing as an absolute stranger permanently for all of time. So make the resolve to acquaint yourself with other aspects of the Buddhist teachings, the Buddhist paths, such as impermanence and also emptiness, if you're able to do that, because these are very helpful complements to our cultivation of love and compassion, so that they can be stronger, more genuine and pure. So yesterday we were looking at point 3 in the 7-point cause and effect method for developing bodhicitta, and that is repaying the kindness of others. just like to read something from Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chenmo, the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, what he says about this point. He says, these beings, your kind mothers, whom you do not recognize due to the process of death and rebirth. So yeah, anyone who thinks, well, I don't remember this person being my mother, but then, at the end of each life, we die and go through a lot of changes. Our mind goes through a lot of changes as it leaves one life and then starts a new life. So it's quite a dramatic experience to go through, and then all the time spent in the womb and so on. So it's quite natural that we don't remember. Most people don't. Some people do. But yeah, not being able to remember past lives. So we shouldn't think that that is proof that we didn't have past lives or that someone wasn't our mother. Anyway, so he says, your kind mothers are suffering and have no refuge. There is nothing more shameful than to do your best to liberate yourself from cyclic existence while considering these beings, your mothers, unimportant and abandoning them. So what he's talking about there is there are some Buddhist practitioners who take refuge in the Buddha and study the Buddha's teachings and practice the Buddha's teachings and do so very diligently. But their goal is liberation or nirvana, which is sometimes called self-liberation, because you're thinking just of liberating yourself from samsara, cyclic existence, and not helping all other living beings. And then he gives a quotation from an Indian master named Chandragoman. One of his texts says, while you see that your relatives are engulfed in the ocean of cyclic existence and are as if fallen into a pit of fire, there's nothing more shameful than to work for your own liberation, neglecting those whom you do not recognize due to the process of death and rebirth. And so the point is to take on the responsibility to help all these beings who have been our mothers. And the best way to do that, in fact, the only way to do that is by attaining enlightenment, Buddhahood, to be able to help all other beings. So this is kind of a tricky point. The fact is, the Buddha did teach a path that leads to nirvana, self-liberation. And so, as I say, within Buddhism, there are those who study those teachings and practice them, meditate on them, and achieve liberation, nirvana. And so it is a valid path. It was taught by the Buddha. And so, we shouldn't disparage that path or disparage anyone who's following that path, because it's fantastic. I mean, it's hard work. They really work hard to achieve their goal of self-liberation. But in our tradition, which is the Mahayana tradition, our goal is not just liberating ourselves, but wanting to liberate all living beings and wanting to reach enlightenment. So this is the Mahayana path, the Bodhisattva path. And it's said that the reason the Buddha did teach this other path leading to self-liberation is because he could see that for some people, the Bodhisattva path would seem too hard and too long, and they just wouldn't want to take it up. So it's not for everybody. And so he did teach this other path leading to self-liberation, which is easier. It's still hard, but it's easier compared to the Bodhisattva path, and it takes less time. And so, it's perfectly fine if there are people who feel more inclined to that path and wish to follow that path, we should respect them, we should encourage them, we should, root for them. Go for it. Good, great. So it wouldn't be right to disparage them. And then we may wonder, well, why, if there is this other path that leads you to enlightenment and is helpful for all sentient beings, why would you not want to follow that? Why would you only want to follow your, the path to your own liberation? And one of the reasons that I've heard for why they follow that path is they say that it's just not necessary for everyone to become a Buddha. I don't know if that idea is actually in their scriptures or not, but this is one of the justifications that the Buddha, it's enough for some people, some beings to become Buddhas. And then as long as there are some Buddhas in the world, they're going to be working to help all other sentient beings. So not everybody has to become a Buddha. That's just not necessary. It's enough for each of us just to get ourselves out of suffering. From our side, from the Mahayana side, the response to that is, it's great. Yes, it's great to attain nirvana, liberation, free yourself from samsara and all its suffering and causes of suffering. That's fantastic. But you haven't really fulfilled your highest potential. There's still some obscurations in the mind that prevent your mind from being, fully enlightened, fully omniscient, fully capable of, doing things, both for yourself and for others. And, so attaining nirvana, self-liberation, you're kind of limiting yourself. Yeah, you're not fulfilling your real potential. You're not able to do all the things that a Buddha can do. So I'm not sure what they would say to that. We can try asking some of our friends what their response to that is. Maybe they say, that's okay. This is good enough for me. I was thinking maybe it's a little bit comparable to, in terms of education. There's some people who, are happy to graduate from high school and have a high school diploma and then start working. Yeah, they don't aspire to go further, even though maybe they could. But they feel, that's good enough for me. This is all I want to do. But there are other people who aspire for much more. They want to go to university, get a university degree, even a master's degree, even a PhD. Sometimes it may not be for an altruistic intention. Maybe they want to be wealthy, they want status, and so on. But I'm sure there's many who do have an altruistic intention. They want to do good for their country, for the world, for people, and so on. And they realize, having a higher level of education would enable them to do a lot more to help others. So it's like, you can't say this is right and this is wrong, but it's just different people. Different kinds of people have different inclinations. And so the Buddha respected that and, gave different teachings according to different minds, different mentalities, different ways of thinking. So when it comes to ourselves, it is good to explore the different traditions of Buddhism, the different teachings that the Buddha gave, and check for ourselves which is more suited for ourselves, which feels more right for ourselves. And in my, experience in all these years, I've met people or known people who start off, for example, they start off in Mahayana, but then they, leave that and take up the Theravada practice. And some even leave Buddhism altogether. I know a couple of people who, they were even monastics. They even got ordained for a while, and then they gave that up and became ordained in the Christian tradition. So that happens too. Sometimes they kind of try out Buddhism for a while and realize this isn't really for them. They want to follow another tradition, which is fine. Each person has to find what's right for them, what works for them. And then there's also people who start off in the Theravada tradition, but then after a while switch to Mahayana. There's all kinds of possibilities. And there's also some who do both. That's become much more common recently. For example, when the Dalai Lama gives teachings, in the past it was all Tibetan monks and nuns, but now we see Theravada monks and I don't know if nuns. I don't remember seeing nuns, but a lot of Theravada monks from Burma, Thailand, Sri Lanka coming to the Dalai Lama's teachings, which is quite wonderful. And yeah, so it is good to make ourselves acquainted with the different teachings that the Buddha gave, so that we are aware of them, and we may also find certain aspects of the teachings of another tradition helpful for our own practice, which we can do. We can take elements of another tradition and add them to our own practice and use them to enhance our practice. But I think at some point we would need to make a decision about whether we are aiming for full enlightenment Buddhahood or aiming for our own liberation from samsara, because those are quite distinct paths. So in the beginning you can sort of try them out, but eventually you will need to decide to focus on one or the other. So now we'll move on to point number 4, love, loving kindness. Did you get the slides that I sent? I just sent them this morning. So this is the 4th step of the 7-point cause and effect instruction. So I put the term for this in different languages, just in case you're interested, because you do come across these sometimes. For example, in names in the Tibetan tradition, the term for love is jampa. So we have one jampa among our community, not here right now, but yeah, jampa is kind of a common name. So that's the word for love, loving kindness. And then the Sanskrit term is maitri. We have a maitri here as well, a feline maitri. It's also the root of the name for a Buddha, Maitreya Buddha, you may have heard of. He's said to be the next Buddha who will come into the world and teach, turn the wheel of Dharma, revive the teachings. And then metta is the Pali term. That's also quite well known. Metta meditation is a very popular meditation in the Theravada tradition. And I've heard some people aren't so comfortable with the English term love, maybe because it's sometimes it's used in different ways and not always, such a healthy, like all the love songs and so on. So if you're not comfortable with the term love, then there are alternatives such as loving kindness. So this is a term that some teachers use, as an alternative. Other terms, alternate terms would be friendliness. It's not quite as strong as love, but actually, apparently that is more the sense of the Sanskrit term, maitri. It is more like friendliness, being friendly, kind, care, concern. So if you're not comfortable with the term love, then you can use one of those other terms. And I think in conventional worldly sense, we can talk about different kinds of love that we may have for different kinds of people. Like there's more romantic love, like when falling in love, but then there's also love that's more enduring, like the love between family members when it's there. It's not always there. It is. So, and I read one of Thich Nhat Hanh's books, he spoke about this. I think in Vietnamese, there's different terms for love, and one is more like the short-term love we fall into and fall out of. But then there is a more enduring kind of love like that can last for years and years and years. So then, yeah, in the Buddhist teachings, in particular the Lamrim teachings, they differentiate different kinds of love. And one type, the Tibetan term is Yongi Jamba, which is a little hard to translate, but one translation is heartwarming love. And this is explained as the kind of love that parents have for their children, where they cherish them with feelings of closeness and affection. And this is the kind of love that is said to arise from meditating on the first 3 steps of the 7-point thought transformation. So seeing all sentient beings as our mothers, remembering their kindness, and then wanting to repay their kindness. So through meditating, probably for a while, not just once or twice, but consistently over a period of time, then this kind of feeling will arise towards sentient beings. And in the beginning, we can't expect to feel it for every sentient being in the universe. So it's recommended that we start with those who are nearby, like the people around us, in our family, in our neighborhood, in our community, friends, people we work with, and so on. So the people we meet and interact on a daily basis. So start with them, and gradually, the more we get familiar with these kind of feelings for the people close to us, around us, it will be easier to feel them for people who are further away. And eventually, over a long period of time, we'll be able to feel it for everyone, every living being. So it's a process. So by meditating on the first 3 steps, then this will arise, this feeling of endearment, of closeness, of affection for other beings. Then it said there's another type of love that is, I think the term would simply be jampa in Tibetan. And this is wishing sentient beings to have happiness and its causes. And this is the type of love that we need to cultivate gradually more and more and more for more and more people and more living beings. Because again, our ultimate goal is becoming a Buddha who's totally dedicated to helping all living beings find the happiness that they wish for and be free of the suffering they don't want. So this is the kind of love we need to develop to generate bodhicitta and eventually reach enlightenment. So we already do have this kind of feeling in our mind, at least in a seed form. And so it's just a question of getting in touch with it and nourishing it, just like a little seed in the garden. You plant a seed, but you have to make sure it has the right fertilizer and enough water and is free of weeds and so on, so that it can grow and produce its fruit. And so there are practices that we can do to cultivate this kind of love. And so, like in the prayer we recite before teachings, and also in the sadhana, the prayer of the 4 immeasurables, it says, "May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes." So it's good to think about happiness and its causes, and explore, what does that mean? What is happiness? And there's some really nice teachings about this in terms of different kinds of happiness. Not all happiness is the same. And I was really happy to encounter this teaching, because when I, first started learning Buddhism, they just said happiness. And, there was no clarification of what is this happiness, and are there different kinds of happiness. So I was really happy when I found there are different kinds of happiness. And I first encountered this in a book by Ayakema. Ayakema, she's passed away now. She was a German nun, really good teacher, and there's a number of books of her teachings. And her tradition was mainly Theravada. She studied in Sri Lanka, Theravada teachers. So she didn't really mention the sutra source for this teaching, but it must be there somewhere that there are different kinds of happiness. So I like to share this with others. So one type of happiness is what most people in the world consider happiness. And it's happiness, or more, maybe pleasure is a better term for it. The good feelings we have with when we have sensory experiences, when we see something attractive, or we hear sounds that we find attractive, like our favorite music, or the sweet singing of a bird, or when we smell a nice odor, somebody's baking a cake or some other kind of food we like, or perfume or whatever. When we taste tastes that we enjoy, everyone has their own preference for that. Some people love chili, other people hate chili. Some people like sweets, others don't. But anyway, when there's tastes that we enjoy and we get to taste those, then we feel that pleasure, that happiness. And then with our body, with our tactile sense, when we have pleasant experiences, like if it's hot outside, you've been outside working and you're all hot and sweaty and you come into a nice cool place, it feels really good. Or opposite, if it's freezing cold outside and you come into a warm place, it feels really good. So physical or bodily sensations that are enjoyable. So with our five senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and tactile, when we have pleasant experiences, we encounter objects that make us feel good. That's one kind of happiness, which, like I say, maybe it's better to call pleasure. And yeah, probably most people in the world are occupied with trying to get that as much as we can, and manufacturers and so on are coming up with new products all the time to feed our desire for that kind of happiness. I'm always amazed when I happen to go to a supermarket and looking at all the different kinds of teas. You know, in the past, there was like just, maybe one kind of black tea and one kind of herbal tea. And now there's just, they're coming up with all these combinations of peach, mango, green tea, and it's like endless. You really can't. That's why supermarkets are getting bigger and bigger all the time. And the same with coffee as well. In the past, there was just one kind of coffee, and now there's hundreds from this place and that place, and mixed with vanilla and mixed with, it's like, yeah. So I can't help but wonder, is it that people, consumers are really demanding all these, this variety of products? Or is it the manufacturers that are trying to compete with each other and make sure they have a big share of the market? I don't know. Maybe it's both. But yeah, so anyway, so this kind of experience, this kind of pleasure we get from our via our five senses, it is pleasure. Buddhism, does acknowledge that it is a nice experience. But it's considered a kind of not such high quality happiness. For one thing, it doesn't last very long. It's very short-lived, very short-term. It may last a few seconds, a few minutes, maybe a few hours, but, eventually it's gone. So it's very, very impermanent. And what else? Yeah, one problem is we tend to get attached Yeah, because we already have attachment in our mind, then attachment comes up and we want more of that experience. And yeah. So this leads to kind of endless cycle of wanting, getting, losing, wanting, getting, losing over and over and over again. And never really getting satisfied. Yeah, this kind of pleasure isn't fully satisfying. There's a saying, one saying by the Buddha about following desire is like drinking salt water. Instead of quenching your thirst, it just makes you thirstier. You just want more and more and more. We can see that in our experience. Yeah, we get one nice object or nice experience, and after a while we're dissatisfied with it and we want another one, a better one. And also manufacturers understand that very well. So they're always coming up with new models of cars and phones and computers and so on, so that yeah, helping us get dissatisfied and wanting more. And then they get richer. Yeah, so so there's shortcomings to this kind of pleasure. And it's not that we should deny ourselves. Some people misunderstand that and think that Buddhism is telling us we shouldn't enjoy things, we shouldn't have pleasure. That's not the point. It's fine to have, to eat nice food and look at nice objects and so on. But to a what do you say? In a limited way, not in an unlimited way. So Buddhism emphasizes contentment, learning to be content, having enough, having a certain amount of the things you need and make you happy, but not following this wish to have more and better all the time. So contentment is very important. Otherwise, it's a big hindrance in meditation, as you've probably noticed. When you're trying to meditate and try to keep the mind focused on something, it's very hard. And one of the main reasons it's so hard is because of desire, attachment. Our mind can just come up with endless things that we would like to get and enjoy and experience and so on. So your mind just can spend hours doing that. But that's not helpful for your meditation. So to really succeed in meditation, especially learning to concentrate, developing concentration, we do need to curb our desires and learn to be content with what we have. And then a second type of happiness is, I like to call it spiritual happiness, because it's the good feelings that arise when we have positive states of mind. For example, love. We have this feeling of love, kindness, compassion, caring about others, being generous, helping others, and so on. Then you feel good. Yeah, there's a good feeling from doing that. And it's a different kind of happiness than the first one. Yeah, the first one is kind of more selfish, more self-centered. I experience this pleasure. Yeah, maybe you're enjoying it together with your friends, but still, there's kind of a strong sense of ego involved in it. And the second type of happiness is probably less self-centered and more other-centered, more focused on others. So in a way, it's more pure, more spiritual. And we can also experience this by, I think, practicing meditation, learning to tame our mind and, keep our mind focused on something virtuous and wholesome rather than letting it run everywhere, wild, out of control. So it may not always happen when trying to meditate, but I'm sure everyone does have times in their meditation when they do feel really happy and would, so happy to be sitting there doing their meditation and not wanting to go anywhere else or do anything else. So there's a sort of contentment and happiness and satisfaction that can come from meditation. And also living ethically. If we really make an effort to refrain from harmful, non-virtuous actions and instead try to do positive, virtuous actions. So living according to karma, living ethically, virtuously. So that also brings a certain amount of, again, it's not pleasure, it's not so much sense pleasure, it's more of a mental, psychological, emotional happiness. So that kind of happiness is, if we compare it with the first, we'll probably see that it is more satisfying. It's also more long-term, can last longer. Although not always. Sometimes that can be very short-term as well. But again, the more we work on our mind and learn how to cultivate these positive qualities and make them more part of our life, then we can make that kind of happiness last longer. And it's also more reliable because, the first kind of happiness, you need that external object in order to have it, right? And if that object isn't available, then you can be quite unhappy. Whereas the second kind of happiness, once you learn how to work with your mind and, generate these positive thoughts and aspirations and so on, you can do it anywhere. You don't have to have that object or be in a certain place. Yeah, even if you're in prison, even if you're in a really difficult situation, you can work with your mind and bring up certain thoughts, certain contemplations, and find an experience of contentment, peace, happiness, anywhere, anytime. So in that way, it's more reliable. Does that make sense? And then Buddhism talks about even better types of happiness, but these require a lot more effort in the practice of meditation. So when, one of the things we need to develop in our practice is concentration. And so we have a type of meditation for doing that. It's called calm abiding. And that's training our mind to stay focused on one single object, which could vary. You could use an image of the Buddha or the breath, or different objects are recommended. But you train your mind to stay on that one object for longer and longer periods of time. And it's hard work. It's not easy. You have to apply various antidotes to various faults that can arise, such as sleepiness or stinking, dullness, or distraction, and so on. But anyway, it's said that when you do achieve calm abiding, and the achievement of calm abiding is explained to be when you're able to keep your mind focused on your object of meditation for a minimum of 4 hours without distraction. Yeah. So it takes a lot of work to get to that point. But when you do get to that point, then it said you experience both physical and mental bliss that's far better than anything we've ever experienced. Better than any sense pleasure or any other positive experience. So it's really like super, super bliss, super happiness. So that's available. That's possible to attain. People do it. It's not easy, but it is achievable. And then there's an even better happiness, and that's from developing wisdom. So the wisdom that understands reality, the true nature of things, that's the antidote to our afflictions, to our ignorance, our anger, our greed, jealousy, all these kind of painful states of mind that keep coming up again and again. So having that wisdom, it doesn't mean that as soon as you have that wisdom, all the afflictions disappear at once. It's a gradual process. You sort of peel them away like the layers of an onion. But gradually, with that wisdom, meditating on that wisdom again and again and again, then the afflictions get eradicated such that they never arise again. And you at least have them under control, so they're not just, coming up and taking over your mind and making your mind all disturbed and unhappy. So with that wisdom, then there's an even greater happiness. And I think it's because your mind is becoming free of those painful, disturbing emotions. Yeah. So once they're gone, then your mind can really enjoy peace. And then, the path leading to both nirvana and Buddhahood involves a number of stages. So as you're going through these various stages, then your happiness, your joy, your peace, your bliss will get better and better. And then the highest happiness of all is enlightenment, Buddhahood. So at that point, your mind is free forever from all the afflictions, all the disturbing thoughts and emotions and other obscurations. So it abides constantly, every minute, every second, in indescribable peace and bliss. So anyway, it's good to know, I think, that there are different kinds of happiness. Not all happiness is the same. And we've probably had experience of the first two types of happiness, so we can compare them and hopefully recognize that, the second one is better than the first one. And then that can give us encouragement that if we continue working on our mind and following this path, doing these practices, we will be able to experience, even higher and more sublime, more enjoyable types of happiness. So when we meditate on loving kindness and wish happiness for sentient beings, then we do wish them to have all types of happiness, even the first one, because some people don't have enough to eat. A lot of people suffer from hunger. And so we do want them to be free of that suffering. We do want them to have full tummies and healthy bodies and homes and protection from heat and cold and wild animals and so on. So we do want sentient beings to have the basic type of happiness and pleasure. But that alone isn't enough, because that's only temporary. And if we really understand samsara, cyclic existence, and what it means to be in samsara, as long as those people and beings still have minds containing afflictions, ignorance, attachment, aversion, and so on, and they are creating karma on the basis of those, then they are just creating the cause for suffering again and again and again and again. So if we think about that, then we don't want that. We want them to be free of suffering. And so then we want them to achieve the higher forms of happiness, like the second one, cultivating positive states of mind, love, compassion, ethics, and so on, and then achieve the higher forms of happiness up to enlightenment. Does that make sense? So ideally, that's, the awareness that we have when we're cultivating loving kindness for sentient beings. We wish them to have all forms of happiness up to the highest. And then the prayer says, may all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. So that's important as well, to understand the causes of happiness, because happiness doesn't just drop down from the sky, and it doesn't come just because we wish for it, but it's the result of causes. Everything, all of our experiences are the results of causes. So what are the causes of happiness that we wish sentient beings to have? What are the causes they need to create to have happiness? Virtue, right? So, Yeah, even the first type of happiness, the sensory pleasures, that's the result of virtue. And actually, that's the definition of virtue. The definition of virtue in Buddhism is the cause of happiness. It's what leads to happiness. And so the Buddha explained, what is virtue? Mainly, virtue is positive states of mind, positive mental factors. There's 11. This is a big topic in Buddhism, all the different aspects of the mind. But there are aspects of our mind that are called mental factors. And these are things that come and go. And some of them are virtuous, some of them are not virtuous, some of them are neutral. And so among the mental factors, there's 11 that are virtuous, starting with faith. Faith is one. Another one is, it's actually called non-anger. Non-anger. But it said that's what love is, okay? Love is not mentioned as one of those mental factors, but it's said to be. It's a non-anger. And non-anger isn't just absence of anger or hatred, but it's the opposite of anger or hatred. So when we can overcome anger and have positive feelings of caring about others, then that's one of the virtuous mental factors. And then another one is non-harmfulness, and that's said to be, that's what compassion is. Compassion is a non-harmfulness. It's where we recognize others don't want to suffer, just like we don't want to suffer. And so we make this conscious effort to refrain from harming them as much as we can. So that's a virtuous mental factor. So mainly virtue are these positive states of mind, positive mental factors, plus the actions that we do motivated by them. So when we're able to have these virtuous mental factors, and then they motivate us to do things like treating others with kindness, respect, helping them, and so on. So then those are virtuous actions, also called good karma. So that's the main cause of happiness, is virtue, virtuous mental states, and virtuous actions motivated by virtuous mental states. So those are the cause of even the sensory happiness, being able to have beautiful things to look at, and nice sounds to hear, and nice smells and tastes and bodily sensations. So if we have those, if we have access to those in our life, it's because we created virtue, good karma in the past. And then also virtue is the cause of the higher forms of happiness, the second and so on. So those also depend on virtue. So that's the main cause of happiness. So when we say may all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness, this is what we're wishing for them. We want them to have as much happiness as possible here and now, but we also want them to create virtue rather than non-virtue. We want them to do good and not negative things, so that they will create. Because we can't make others happy. We don't actually have the ability to make another being happy. We can try, and we might be successful sometimes, but whether they do experience happiness or not is mainly due to their own mind, due to their karma, what kind of karma they create and have created in the past, and due to mental factors within their mind. So if we really want other beings to be happy, we aspire for them, wish for them to create virtue. And whenever possible, if we can help them do that, if we can teach them how to create virtue, not in a pushy way, as we saw yesterday, but in a gentle way, encouraging people to do good and avoid negative actions as much as possible, and also just being a good example ourselves. If we ourselves try to live that way, we try to do what is virtuous, refrain from non-virtue, then, people are very much influenced by other people. Monkey see, monkey do. People see, people do. So, yeah. So if we act, we live, we behave in a virtuous way, other people may notice that and mimic us. There's no guarantee, but that's quite a powerful way of influencing others and helping others to create virtue and refrain from non-virtue. I remember when I first went home to visit my family after being in India and Nepal for a couple of years, and I was already a nun. And so we don't kill, right? Even insects, we don't kill them. If they're inside, we catch them and take them outside, but we don't kill them. So one day, my mother saw a spider in the house, and her, most people, I think in America, you kill it. She got a tissue and she was going to squish the spider and then throw it in the toilet. And I said, "No, Mom, don't do that. I'll take it out." So I caught it in a jar or something and took it outside. And she was like, "You've probably never seen anybody do that before." But then I noticed thereafter she was doing it too. She started doing that too. So I didn't have to tell her, "Don't kill." Well, I guess I did. But I said, "Let me take care of it." Yeah. So, and then, being vegetarian, being a vegan, again, if people meet you and find out that that's how that's your way of eating, then that gets them to start thinking, "Oh, yeah, maybe it's not nice to kill animals. And, oh, yeah, I'd like to do that too." And even if they can't do it fully, but just to start thinking in that way and being more caring about others. So anyway, so this is, if we really wish happiness for others, then it's quite expansive, different kinds of happiness that we wish them to have, and also the different causes of happiness that we wish them to have. So, it takes time to learn all these things and then incorporate them into our practice. So, if at this point in time you're just able to wish them to be happy right here, right now, that's already a good thing. But just to know that there's a lot more that you can incorporate. Then there's a list of benefits of loving kindness. And some of these are in the sutras. They were taught by the Buddha. Also in the text of Nagarjuna, he mentions benefits of loving kindness. So it's helpful to look at these and understand that it does require some effort to have more loving kindness. But if we understand the benefits of it, then we'll have more enthusiasm or energy to do it. So the first is happy mind, healthy body. So if we have more loving kindness, then our mind will naturally be more happy, cheerful, positive, less unhappy. We may not experience that immediately, so don't expect something instant, but gradually over time, the more we work on having that state of mind as much as we can in relation to others, then we will notice, our mind is happier. Because the opposite of loving kindness, opposite states of mind are anger, hatred, self-centeredness. So if we look at those states of mind, they don't bring much happiness, and they're pretty miserable. So we're reducing those and increasing thoughts of caring for others, which are so beautiful. It's really, really beautiful to feel that way. And it will also affect our body, our health. And I mentioned the other day, I've read some research. Research has been done, which is quite amazing. I'm just so glad they're doing that. It wouldn't have happened 40, 50 years ago. Scientists wouldn't have done research on love and compassion. What do you do? You're kidding. So just the fact that there are some scientists who are interested in these states of mind and researching them is fantastic. And so, yeah, the research is very positive. It does show that people who are more loving and kind and compassionate and helpful are healthier and happier and get along better with others. So it's nice that there's research supporting these ancient teachings. And then next is others will love, help, and protect you. So if we are more loving and caring towards others, they will reciprocate. Not everybody. We can't expect everybody to love us, but generally, yeah. I mean, look at the Dalai Lama. So many people love him. And not everybody, like the Chinese government. So there are people who don't like him. But yeah, it's kind of hard not to like somebody who's really loving and kind and caring and compassionate. You'd have to be a pretty negative person to not appreciate such a person. So, I mean, I think we want people to like us. That's kind of normal. We want to be liked by others. We want others to treat us well, to help us when we need help, protect us. And so, yeah, this is the way to do it, is to care about them. Not that that should be our main reason. I mean, that's some of these can sound like kind of facetious, you know. You'll get all these benefits from being loving to others. But the fact is, like I said yesterday, we do have self-centeredness. We do care about ourselves, and we can't just cut that off, stop that mind from happening. And so, as the Dalai Lama says, be wisely selfish. If you do care about yourself, you do want happiness and health and all these things for yourself, this is the way to do it. This is the real way to do it, by developing love and kindness and compassion for others. So you'll get benefit too. So again, if we see that we're going to benefit from this, we might have more enthusiasm for it. And then you'll sleep well, you'll have pleasant dreams, wake up refreshed. So I think we can see that ourselves, because if we're, like when we're angry, if we have anger, hatred, we're angry at somebody, then there's all these negative thoughts running around in our mind. And when we go to bed at night, we may not be able to stop those thoughts, and they keep us awake. So, yeah, anger is very disturbing to the mind, prevents a good sleep. And even if you do fall asleep, you may wake up in the middle of the night again with these angry thoughts running around in your mind, and not being able to sleep well. And you may have bad dreams as well, negative, nightmares, people chasing you, monsters trying to kill you, and things like that. So if we have more positive, loving, compassionate thoughts, then our sleep will be better, our dreams will be better, and we'll be able to wake up refreshed. So that's helpful. Next one is about our appearance. We'll have a kind of radiant appearance, and also look sort of relaxed. And then, we're more approachable, right? People will be more comfortable people will want to be around us. When someone's looking angry all the time, it kind of scares people away. And I mean, this is not just for our own benefit, but, Bodhisattva wants to help others. And to be able to help others, people have to be attracted to you. If you have an appearance that scares people away, then, that reduces how much help you can give them. So we want to have a sort of nice appearance that people will be comfortable in our presence and attracted to us, and then they're more likely to listen to us and be influenced by us. So that helps with our bodhisattva work. And our ability to communicate with others will be improved as well. It'll be easier to talk to people and listen to them and have meaningful conversations with them. The next point is calm mind, better concentration, more efficient. Right? So the opposite states of mind to loving kindness are anger, hatred, hostility, aggressiveness, and so on, jealousy. So those states of mind, we've all had experience of those, and I think we can easily see how they disturb the mind, make our mind disturbed, not calm and peaceful, and also very hard to concentrate. Like even your work, when you're trying to do some work and you're feeling really angry, then those angry thoughts keep coming up in your mind and makes it hard to concentrate, get your work done. And of course, in meditation, if you're trying to meditate, stay focused on your object of meditation, but anger can take your mind away and you can spend the whole session meditating on anger instead of meditating on compassion or the Buddha or whatever. Yeah, so with love, loving kindness, then it's easier to concentrate. And I once heard Ajahn Brahm. Ajahn Brahm is a well-known teacher. He's English originally, but lives in Australia and has been a monk for many years, disciple of Ajahn Chah. And he often leads retreats, mainly mindfulness and concentration. And I heard him say that, because he's guided many people in meditation, and he says he notices that people who have a kinder disposition, who are more kind of kind and caring, they have an easier time in meditation. They more quickly are able to concentrate. So if we do see the value of that, then and we do wish to do well in our meditation and not just sit there with our mind out of control, then loving kindness will help. And then more efficient. So whatever we do, whether it's worldly activities, work, and so on, or Dharma activities, they'll go better. Things will work better if we can do them with loving kindness rather than anger and agitation. And then having a peaceful and clear mind at the time of death. So if we do really make an effort to cultivate and live according to this quality of loving kindness and compassion and make ourselves familiar with those during our life, then it will be easy to have those in our mind at the time of death. So then our mind will be more peaceful and positive and clear, which is a good way to die. We don't want to die feeling angry, which unfortunately does happen sometimes. People die in anger or in anxiety, fear, or clinging, grasping to the things they're leaving behind. Those are not good ways to die. So the best way to die is with a mind that's calm, clear, peaceful, and having positive thoughts, positive feelings like love and compassion. And then so those are benefits we can experience in this life. We can check them for ourselves. You don't have to just believe what the Buddha said, but check your own experience to see if these are true. And then the last point is more long-term benefits, which we can't prove right now, but these are what the Buddha taught. So if we feel that Buddha is someone we can rely on, someone trustworthy, then that will make us more open to his teaching. So he says, cultivating loving kindness, compassion, these positive states of mind will lead to good rebirths, fortunate rebirths in future lives, and then liberation, nirvana, and full enlightenment, awakening. Okay, so just to go on a little bit further, how to do it? How can we increase love, loving kindness? So, first point is work on decreasing obstacles to it, which are anger, hatred, attachment, self-centeredness, jealousy. So, just wishing to be more loving and kind, but not doing anything about these states of mind that we have and pop up, without choice or control, but just because of habit. They're part of our mind, carried over from past lives. And so they pop up in certain circumstances, and they're like, blocking our love. It's impossible to feel loving kindness and anger or hatred at the same time. They're just like totally opposite. They can alternate, like when you're having an argument with somebody, a dear friend or a relative or whatever, you can notice at certain moments you feel love for that person, and then another moment anger comes up. So they can alternate in our mind, even for the same person, but at the exact same time, it's just not possible. They're completely opposite. So if we do see the value of love and want to have more love, loving kindness, then we do need to learn how to work on our anger and those kind of feelings, aversion and impatience and so on. And again, there's lots of antidotes. See Venerable Children's book, Working with Anger, if you need help with that. And, we can't expect quickly and easily we're going to be totally free of that particular state of mind. But learning how to manage it is helpful. Learning tools with which we can manage when it does pop up, and then practicing, getting familiar with those tools, and then we'll be able to use them more quickly and easily. And actually, loving kindness itself is a helpful tool against anger and hatred. I may have told this story before, so some of you have heard it, but maybe some of you haven't. This young woman told me that she worked in a company, and her job was to answer the phone when clients called and needed help. And sometimes they were angry. They were like, frustrated and fed up and wanting to complain. And when she said that when she heard the tone of voice of the other person and knew that they were angry, it would spark her anger, trigger her anger as well. And so then she would be speaking to them in an angry way, and they would be speaking in an angry way. And so there would be this kind of not very pleasant conversation. But when she learned this practice of loving kindness, she would use it. So if she heard the other person's voice having an angry tone, she would just repeat to herself, "May you be happy, may you be happy, may you be happy." And that would help her mind to stay calm and not get angry. And she noticed that if she could, not get angry and stay calm, the other person would also calm down. Because anger, it's like feeding each other. One person's angry, the other person's angry. You're feeding each other's anger, increasing each other's anger. But when one person is angry and the other person isn't, eventually it loses its energy. So that was her experience. Yeah, so if you can remember that in a situation where anger is coming up in your mind, and you just repeat to yourself something like that phrase of, "May you be happy, may this person be happy, may these people be happy," then it can help your mind not go with the energy of anger and impatience and so on, and help you stay calm and in a more positive state of mind. And attachment is also an obstacle to anger. In the Theravada tradition, when they talk about the four measurables, each of the four measurables has what's called a near enemy and a far enemy. So for loving kindness, the far enemy is anger, hatred, and the near enemy is attachment. And the meaning of near enemy is it's a state of mind that kind of sneaky. It can look like that particular state of mind, but it isn't really. It's actually something afflicted. So for loving kindness, the far enemy is anger and hatred. That's easy to see. The near enemy is attachment, meaning attachment has some similar features to love and compassion, and it can easily be mistaken for love, but it isn't. And it's actually an obstacle to love. So we've been kind of talking about that the last couple of days. Like that's what comes up in our relationships. And usually there's a sort of mixture of attachment and love. So what we need to do is be able to look at our experience, observe our experience, and try to recognize what is love and what is attachment. It's not always easy to recognize that, but at least to understand, to know the difference between them and try to recognize that, and then try to weed out the attachment. The attachment is like a weed in your garden, choking your nice plants. So we have to be able to distinguish the attachment and work on overcoming that. And then increase the love, loving kindness. That's not easy to do. It'll probably take time, but again, one of the best ways is just to see who is more important in this situation, me or the other person. Who are we thinking about? Who are we focusing on? And if it's more about me, then that's probably attachment. If it's more about the other person and the I is sort of smaller, reduced, then that's probably love. And then self-centeredness and jealousy. These are other states of mind that we get into sometimes, and they are obstacles to genuine love. So we'll have to stop here. We're at the end of our time, but I'll continue in the afternoon. Okay, so let's dedicate the merit, the positive energy of our session, generating a positive altruistic intention, spending this time learning, reflecting on these beautiful teachings. So this positive energy, something we can share with all beings, wishing them to have happiness and its causes, be free of suffering and its causes, and achieve the highest happiness of enlightenment.